Thank you so much for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm Efrem Graham. Today, Israel keeping its military forces in a key region to provide security after Islamic rebels take over Syria. This as a deal for Hamas to release its hostages may finally be near. A prayer gathering in Wisconsin as investigators try to find the motive in Monday's shooting at a Christian school. A Virginia realtor could lose his license because he posted a Bible verse back in 2015 that is being called hate speech. And our Studio 5 conversation with actor Jonathan Roumie of The Chosen about the upcoming season 5 of the hit series. All those stories and more today on CBN News Watch.
This is CBN News Watch.
It's a busy Wednesday. We're going to begin in the Middle East, where Israel is keeping up its military protective measures against the Islamic rebels in Syria. And a possible deal to finally free the Hamas hostages could be reached soon. But there are still some key points to be worked out. Paul Strand brings us the story. He reports from Jerusalem.
Some sources say a deal to free the hostages in Gaza is closer than ever and could be reached within a month. But others believe talk of an imminent deal is exaggerated. The main sticking point? Hamas fears that if it releases the hostages before the war is permanently ended, Israel will then wipe out the terror group. Hamas reportedly proposes releasing a few hostages at a time as long as the ceasefire keeps getting extended. The notion of a deal that doesn't free all the hostages at once infuriates former captives and family members of those who remain in Gaza.
Bring the hostage home. No wars, no promise. Only action. Bring them back, all of them.
I know exactly what the hostages are going through. I saw it. I experienced it. A partial deal will be a stain on the heart of our society for generations.
On the Syrian front, Israel continues to take action to secure its borders. During a visit to Mount Hermon, Israel's prime minister declared IDF troops will stay in this buffer zone on the Syrian side of the strategic Golan Heights to guarantee the recent jihadist takeover of Syria doesn't spill over into the Jewish nation.
It's important for Israel's security, which has only been reinforced in recent years, and especially in recent weeks, with the dramatic events taking place here below us in Syria. We will determine the best arrangement that will ensure our security.
Israel's deputy foreign minister is explaining why Israeli jets have struck well over 300 Syrian military targets since rebels took over.
To make sure that terrorist organizations don't have access to highly sophisticated weapons, ballistic missiles, including chemical weapons as well.
In the U.S., leaders of Congress showed solidarity with the Jewish people Tuesday by lighting a menorah to commemorate Hanukkah. The Jewish holiday commemorates the miracle of God keeping a flame lit many days when there was only enough oil for a few hours. In a year of rising anti-Semitism, the flame gives hope.
We all know that 2024 was a very difficult year for Jewish Americans.
And amid a rise in anti-Semitic attacks at home and abroad, we need to keep the flame of hope burning brighter, greater, more than ever.
We believe the light of truth always overcomes the darkness of terror.
We will continue to reiterate with moral clarity that anti-Semitism in any way, shape, or form is unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American.
The leaders lit the flame with Rabbi Levi Shem Tov, affectionately known as the Rabbi of Capitol Hill. Paul Strand, CBN News, Jerusalem.
For more now, we turn to our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell. He's joining us from Jerusalem. So, Chris, a Hamas official is reportedly saying a hostage deal could be signed as soon as the end of this week. But there seems to be controversy over it at the same time. What's the general feeling about a deal there in Israel?
Well, Efrem, I think the general feeling here in Israel, and has been for many months, is hope. Hope that they could be freed, and finally that they could be set free, that there's sort of the closure that Israelis have been experiencing, or lack of closure since October 7th, would finally be filled, that these hostages could come back. I think the other expression would be angst. There's really an anguish of soul for many Israelis of their fellow Jews, their fellow Israelis are suffering so much there in the dungeons of Gaza, as well as their families. I was also say there's cautious optimism. There have been many deals before, like on the verge of deals, and they haven't followed through. This, however, because of the many different details or a sense of that it really actually could be a breakthrough, I think, as many people are hopeful. It would be a great Hanukkah gift for Israelis, and we know this because there's flexibility in Hamas's position right now. They may be flexible about having the end of the war declared and also allowing IDF soldiers on the Gaza border. So all of those, I think, make it for a hopeful situation right here with cautious optimism, Ephraim.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israeli troops will stay in a key area in the Golan Heights after the Islamic rebels take over in Syria. Why is that important?
Well, you know, this reminds me of a scene from the movie Gettysburg, Ephraim, and the reason being at the very beginning of that battle, there was a key moment when I believe it was General Buford made this decision to seize the high ground. And the high ground there in Mount Hermon is literally the high ground between Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. Now, Israel had controlled some of the Mount Hermon area since 1974, since the 1973 Yom Kippur War, but the Syrian side was really the higher ground. And so I think this is gives literally Israel has a view of all the way to Damascus. The radar is going to increase the ability for them to see exactly what's happening on the ground. They're also establishing a buffer zone there in between the HTS rebel groups that have taken over Syria and Israel. So they're creating facts on the ground. And as we saw in Paul's report, they really have been destroying the war machine of the Assad regime. And so they have no illusions about HTS, this Islamic group, as well as its sponsor, Turkey. So they want to do everything they can to make sure that all these weapons of war, from chemical weapons to ballistic missiles to airplanes, is destroyed and won't fall into the hands of the HTS. But taking the high ground is what they've done on Mount Hermon, and I believe they're going to keep it for as long as they can.
Let's turn now to Iran. The United Kingdom, France, and Germany are calling on Iran to reverse its nuclear program. And reportedly, the Trump team is considering the option of supporting Israeli airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Is that something that has support in the Israeli government?
Oh, totally, Ephraim. Yeah, they've been planning on decades to strike Iran's nuclear sites. They see that as an existential threat. And they're also perhaps looking forward, if this happens, if they do eliminate Iran's nuclear program, maybe the fall of the regime. And I think that's exactly why Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken 3 times directly to the Iranian people. So hopefully they'll take out the nuclear sites and maybe the regime itself.
Leaders of Congress lit a menorah to commemorate Hanukkah and to show solidarity with the Jewish people. How important to Israel and its people is the support of the United States and evangelical Christians?
Ephraim, it's huge. I mean, they're the biggest allies of Israel. Netanyahu understands this. He has for years. Many other Israeli leaders do as well, especially after October 7th. That's one reason why they're excited about actually Governor Mike Huckabee being the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. He's an evangelical Christian. He understands this biblical relationship between Israel and the United States. So the support of evangelical Christians, as signified by lighting the menorah, the Hanukkah, there and celebrating Hanukkah, is a really significant sign of this relationship between Israel and evangelical Christians in the United States.
All right. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, thanks as always for your insights. Stay safe, and know we here are praying for you and our team there in Israel. Coming up, a realtor in Virginia facing accusations of hate speech over a Bible verse he posted online nearly 10 years ago, and the prayer gathering in Wisconsin after the deadly shooting at a Christian school. We're going to hear what investigators are learning about why a 15-year-old girl pulled the trigger when we come back. Police in Madison, Wisconsin are looking for the motive in the deadly shooting at Abundant Life Christian School Monday. The shooter, a 15-year-old girl, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after the attack. As Charlene Aaron reports, residents held a vigil to honor those lost in the tragedy.
The community of Madison is wrestling with the anguish after Monday's shooting. Some are calling for change, as police say the motive appears to be a combination of factors. Worship filled the air as grieving residents gathered at the state capitol Tuesday night to mourn and to pray for those affected by the shooting.
I'm here because because this is such a huge loss for our community, and it's just happening too often.
Pain and sorrow bringing residents together.
What I plead to you tonight is that we find a new way, a deeper way, a more meaningful way to connect with our community. Children to children, children to staff, families to families. We need to connect like we are tonight, each and every day.
For 3 years, this man has been bringing crosses to communities that suffer gun violence in schools.
God spoke to me 3 years ago and told me to build a cross, and I didn't know why. And he revealed to me we had a school shooting in Oxford, Michigan, almost exactly 3 years ago at a high school, and I took the cross to the vigil there. And after that vigil, I knew that the cross wasn't just for Michigan; it was for everyone across the country that needs to feel the message of healing and hope and love for one another.
This student recalling the horror of what happened.
Most of us were crying. We went to the corner. We just hunkered down there. Our teacher, she was talking to us very quietly, of course, like whispering. It felt like we were there, like, forever.
Police are trying to find out what drove 15-year-old Natalie Rupnow to bring a gun to the private Christian school and open fire during study hall, killing a teacher and fellow student. 6 others were injured, including 2 who have life-threatening injuries. Authorities searching the shooter's home for a motive, including possible bullying.
It appears that the motive was a combination of factors. Again, we cannot share that information at this time because we do not want to jeopardize the investigation.
A report from the Washington Post cites a troubled home life, with court records showing the parents married and divorced several times, and that the girl had been in therapy. Her parents are said to be cooperating with the investigation. Meanwhile, police are also going through online accounts and working to verify whether a so-called manifesto belongs to the shooter. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
A free speech case in Virginia challenges a realtor's right to post Bible verses on his Facebook page. The Virginia Association of Realtors ruled Wilson Faber committed a breach of ethics because his post violated a prohibition on, quote, certain religious expressions. Faber told CBN's Wendy Griffith he did nothing wrong, and he's expected to appeal.
This started to come to light last year when 70-year-old Wilson Faber, a realtor and pastor, decided to run for Staunton City Council. Long before his decision to run, Faber reposted a scripture from Reverend Franklin Graham on his Facebook page in 2015. It stated that homosexual sex is a sin based on Leviticus 18:22. Then last year, 2 Staunton realtors, including an openly gay man, filed a complaint with the Virginia Association of Realtors accusing Faber of hate speech.
Why do you think this is all coming out now in 2024?
Because the National Association of Realtors is woke. The leadership of the National Association of Realtors has made it very clear about their involvement and endorsing and approving of the LGBTQ community. And just recently, just a few weeks ago, actually, in Charlottesville, Virginia, the National Association of Realtors provided funding for a drag queen show.
The Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors hosted the November drag show in the name of a fair housing symposium, reportedly funded in part by the National Association of Realtors Fair Housing Grant. We contacted the NAR for comment, and no one has responded to our request.
So let me get this straight. So they can use realtor funds for drag queen shows, but he can't post a biblical scripture on Facebook to support traditional marriage.
That's the position that's being suggested.
Michael Sylvester with Founding Freedoms Law Center represents Faber and tells CBN News that while this is a violation of free speech, there's a catch.
So it all changed in 2020 when the National Association of Realtors adopted a rule that prohibits anybody from speaking what they deem hate speech against certain protected classes, such as sexual orientation or gender identity. But what's incredible here is the post that Wilson made was in 2015, 5 years before that rule even existed. He simply was presenting his religious views about marriage. That should not qualify for a hate speech charge.
For now, Faber can keep his real estate license while they pursue a possible appeal. He says this guilty ruling, however, sets a bad precedent and will likely affect other organizations, not just realtors.
Christians don't have rights, and this is just totally wrong. And the National Association of Realtors, being the largest trade organization in America, they have set a precedent by adopting this policy. If I'm guilty because I post my religious beliefs in a meme or a scripture on my Facebook or social media accounts, if that's guilty of hate speech, there are millions and millions of Christians that agree with my position, and we don't have a voice.
If the guilty verdict stands, Faber could face fines as high as $15,000 and possibly lose his license, which would likely end his real estate career. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Still ahead, our Studio 5 conversation with Jonathan Roumie of The Chosen about the upcoming 5th season and the storyline of The Last Supper. We're going to hear from him right after this. We are counting down to the new season of The Chosen. It is coming in March, but you don't have to wait to get Jesus' take on the storylines, one of which focuses on the Last Supper. I sat down with Jonathan Roumie for a preview.
Great. All right, here we go. Cameras ready? Let's do a lineup.
So we sat here season 1. Here we sit now.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Season 5 almost in the rearview mirror. How is Jonathan feeling?
3, 2, 1. It's hard to describe, Ephraim. It's at once overwhelming and inspiring and giving me a sense of elation that, like, I get to do this.
How would you describe the arc, what plays out in this season for Jesus?
Steamroller, bulldozer, intensity, just a melee of emotions and conflicts, climaxes of conflicts between Jesus and the authorities, climactic frustrations between Jesus and his disciples, their inability to get what he's telling them within days of it happening. And so there's a profound sense of love and sorrow, but also hope, knowing what's to come beyond the crucifixion. So it's a lot. It's a loaded season. It'll be the most beautiful, most complex, most intense season we've ever done. It's going to be quite amazing.
Jesus is the one accused of these violations.
But Jesus is guilty of these infractions. We must consider drastic measures.
If you could, now that we've come so far, look back over the course of your life, your acting career, have you spotted signs that you were being prepared for this, called to this?
1,000%. I mean, from the time I was 11 or 12 years old.
11 or 12?
Yeah, well, where I reenacted the Passion in my backyard after having watched Jesus of Nazareth.
Wow.
I built a life-size cross and painted the nails and the blood and carried it around my backyard, made a crown of thorns from some thistles. And so from that moment, I think the writing's been on the wall.
The beauty of people watching you is you give us the humanity of Christ.
Listen carefully, because I'm going to tell you what is about to happen.
How would you say Jesus has evolved over the course of this period we've played out so far?
We're coming to a point in the story where, Jesus' humanity is on full display. He's going to become the suffering servant. The responses to that will be utterly human. Seeing all his friends leave him. You know, the desolation, the isolation, the despair, how they feel about him. There's a lot of the humanity is getting concentrated now. I think it's like a super concentration of humanity before we see a super concentration of divinity in the resurrection.
And if we are asked to make a statement, how can we defend both his behavior and words?
For those of us who watch intimately, we all describe this project as life-changing for us. You being so heavily involved in leading it, has this changed your life?
100%. I mean, it's changed my relationship with God in that it has deepened it and profoundly and made me want to be more like Jesus in my day-to-day life, not just to play him. And I think that's what we're all called to do as believers. When you're following the principles of Christ, like, life only gets better, and the world has changed, the culture's changed, and I think at the end of the day, that's one of the benefits and impacts of what we're doing.
So thank you for that, and I hope that you're back for 2 more seasons. But that is a wrap on season 5.
Season 5 of The Chosen premieres in theaters March 27th. We will have many more updates from the cast and the crew ahead in the coming weeks. Be sure to join us for an all-new episode of Studio 5. By the way, this evening, the Lion King saga continues with Mufasa. We're going to give you a Studio 5 first look at the film. Plus, recording artist Michael Boggs shares new music just in time for Christmas. You can watch the new episode of Studio 5 on the CBN News channel. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also watch it on the CBN News app or watch on YouTube. We'll be right back with an encouraging word for your Wednesday. Stay with us. It's time now for your Wednesday word, and today's word is patience. The dictionary defines patience as the ability to endure difficult circumstances. Well, it's also a biblical principle and a fruit of the Spirit. Practice patience today. The wait is never wonderful, but it is always worth it. With that word, I encourage you to make this a wonderful Wednesday. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online. That's cbnnews.com. We thank you so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.